Questions are the answers, guys and girls. The more questions that you can ask, the more understanding that you will gain. So seek first to understand and then to be understood, right? So what I've got to do, I've been given 2 ears and 1 mouth, and I've got to use them that way. So I want to ask a question and then listen a lot.
How old are you going to be before you start to experience life like you want it? I want to tell you right now, whether you like it or not, there is a better way to do business.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Business for Builders podcast. This won't sound any different to you if you're on the podcast. However, if you're on YouTube, you will notice a distinct difference. So welcome. My name's Max. I'm your host. I'm the CEO and president here at Smith & Sons in Canada, and I'm the ambitious founder of EliteBusinessAdvisory.com. Great to have you with us. If you're a first-time listener, I hope you'll get some value, tuck it under your arm and make your business better. And of course, if you've been with me for the longest time, I don't think you've seen me do this. So this is a bit of a first. So we'll see how it goes. And we trust you get some value out of it. Don't forget, like and subscribe, hit the bell. One of these drops every week. Get across to Business for Builders, VIP on Facebook, answer the 3 questions. If you're a good sort, I'll let you in. I think that's about the long and the short. If you want to talk to me directly about coaching for contractors, Max at EliteBusinessAdvisory.com. Okay, I think that's about all the housekeeping. Let's get on with it. This month, we're going to talk a little bit about project costing and estimating. So, you know, what I've decided to do this year is to focus on certain subject matter, certain, items and things around what we do as business owners in the construction business, and really just speak to that consistently for all 4 or 5 weeks within the month. And so, this week we're talking about, this month we're talking about project costing and estimating. So we're going to get started and just dig in. And look, we felt compelled to maybe change it up from just me sitting behind the mic to getting onto a whiteboard so I can really get into some steak and potatoes and maybe just add more value perhaps. So really what we've got today, I'm going to talk to you, because we're focused on estimating and costing, I want to just quickly circle back to the first meeting that you have with clients, because it really does set the stage when you go and dive into your estimating software or whatever it is that you do. Now, I've got a few notes on the board here. If you're going to read ahead, that's fine. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to work from left to right and really sort of get down to business once I get over here and just talk a little bit about the actual meeting itself. A couple of introductory points. If you don't have any leads, work, or capital, you're going to find this video probably not as useful as those that do have some leads in the pipeline with a bit of work happening and a little bit of money to spend. And the reason is because you need to be able to set up that infrastructure. And of course, we want to make sure that you are functioning at the highest level as a building company. Now, I'm not going to talk about the first phone call because this is meant to be a really quick episode, just sort of doubling down on a few bits and pieces. But I think in the first phone call, when you're talking to a client, there's many cases where I've basically just sent a message within our system. And of course, I think I alluded to JobTread last week. So we're going to continually now have a link inside of the show notes, and you can click on that. And I need you to ask that you try and attach yourself to Paris. She is my success manager inside JobTread. So anyone that, that deals, if you're listening to me and then one day you email me, you've got questions, I want to make sure you're being looked after like we're being looked after as well. So there is some cases whereby I can use the software to disqualify clients before we've even chatted with them. One case in particular this week where a client had inquired about a fairly small job. It might have only been a $10,000 or $15,000 job. And I happened to catch her reaching out on Facebook. And then my business partner also saw it, and he said, well, that's had 47 comments. So immediately I went straight to JobTread and shot her a message and just let her know that we won't be presenting a bid for her project. And that was the end of that. So what I'm getting at is that the riches are in the niches. So if you don't qualify, what you'll find is you'll get dragged around, by your nose. Now, if you're like over my right shoulder here where you don't have leads and you don't have much work, that's where you'll find yourself begging for the work on Facebook like these other 47 individuals. Not me, I haven't got time to play that game. But in your situation, you might be forced to sort of go after that kind of work. Just understand it's going to be a little bit of a challenge making money from those jobs. But if you just need cash flow and you can run at a break even, then that's going to be okay as well. So in the first phone call, normally I just want to book the meeting. I don't want to get tangled up in design, although they're going to want to tell you what's going on and what they want. And that helps me evaluate whether I'm interested in actually going and do a on-site consultation. So it can work. There can be some proper information that comes. You can evaluate the situation, the opportunity. So if it looks like it's got the goods, and then out we go. So what I have, once I get on site, there's then things that I know intuitively that I call tripwires. Okay, so if the client behaves badly, I've got a few tripwires. This is not an exhaustive list, but if they don't communicate in my software. So remember, I'm looking to work with clients that really do business the way that I want them to do. Now, I'm not asking a lot. It goes into their inbox. You hit the green button and you end up back in the client portal. So it's not hard to. But I've had clients, it's like pulling teeth. And so for my attitude, I'm not going to convince you against your will to do something you're not happy or comfortable doing. But what it does is it does disqualify the clients. If they don't communicate in the system and they insist on running around and going in emails and text, which I don't mind a couple now and then, but the majority, predominantly, because I'm going to be working with design services inside of JobTread. I'm going to work with the clients, obviously. I'm going to work with vendors to get quotes and bids and things like that. So it's all got to happen inside of that software. So if clients don't cooperate in that regard, it's not looking good for them. Okay? If they don't want to talk money, because that's going to be where I get to further over here, is where if I can't chat with a client and they're like, because, okay, two sides to this, sure. They're not a builder. How would they know, and this is what I've talked to some of my guys about, or clients, is that the word budget, it's just not, when you say budget, you're like, are all clients estimators or quantity surveyors? No, they're not, okay? So if we say to them, what's your budget? You're saying, well, you're actually giving them more kudos than what they deserve, because they're not builders. So how would they know? So I ask clients, what's your expectation? Now, if they don't want to talk to me about their expectation because they want to keep their cards close to their chest, then the only way that I can break through is I might say to a client, look, Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner, what's your expectation around the investment required to complete this main floor renovation? And before they get they've just thought about it for a moment. And I'll say, look, Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner, the reason I asked that question is that because if you want me to do this main floor renovation for 60 grand, I'm not your guy. And normally what I'll get this. Well, Max, look, I know it's going to cost more than 60, but you alluded to the fact that it's going to be, more like 150. That was more than what we expected. At least the clients have opened it up. Remember, we're talking about expectation. I'm not asking them to do a bill of quantities and get me a quote. That's not what we're doing. So you've got to be out. So if they don't talk about money and they don't jam with me in that regard, that's going to be another red flag against them as well. If they're demanding, impatient, and disrespectful. I've had some clients that think they own me. Like, I'm working for you technically for free at this stage, and you want to give me a hard time about, deadlines and things like that. And I'm all about speed to lead and try and get the quote back to them as quick as we can and make sure there's some level of investment, because the people that don't pay for quotes, that's just brought up something I was going to talk about, and I promised people I'd talk about, and I didn't put that in these notes, in these show notes, but I'm going to go there now. Demanding, impatient, and disrespectful. I'll get to that one in a minute. Now, I had a client, and you know what? I actually, and I'll be honest with you, we fell into this situation where we didn't have a lot of work, had a lot of leads, didn't have a lot of work. And so I had this gentleman walk in my office here, and he was an associate. He'd worked for somebody that I'd done business with, and he was their representative and all that. So he walks in, and I think, okay, this is a little bit of a sure thing, because we got talking about money. I kind of liked him, and I liked the job, okay? And so what happened was he needed to get a rough idea on price, good enough for him to take it to the bank to be able to see if he could get finance, okay? So this is what happened. I got him that. It fell at the highest end of my high-low, okay? But he took that submission, went to the bank. Sounds like he got an approval in principle. Okay, he was pushing to get the quote in, but I didn't have the selections done. Okay, and then when I started, then what I did is I recommended my architect. Didn't take a dime. You're welcome. And so he began to work with my architect. The architect then referred an energy advisor. Okay, you're welcome. I didn't get a cut of that. And then all of a sudden, the complexity, because now we're dealing with city, right? It increased the cost. And so I had gone to a point that I thought, no, now that I've included all this complexity, it has now increased the price by 42%. So I sent an email and I said, hey, Mr. Homeowner, he shall remain nameless. Because we're 42% over our original indication, we're basically going to bow out. So I'd accepted that I'd done about 4 to 5 months worth of work. I'd done work over a period of 4 to 5 months, including it was around the Christmas break. And I was just accepted that because I had pushed the budget number way beyond what their indication was, I was out of the game. And I'm okay with that. And hence the email went out saying, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner, this is where we find ourselves. We're not going to present a bid. Now, I had not taken a single dime. I'd gone against everything that I talk about, and that is get some level of transaction from the homeowner to get some buy-in as it relates to me doing the work, okay, for the quote. I didn't do that. And then when I bowed out because I knew I was over budget, he then said, he'll still come back to me and ask me, and he said, can you still get me the quote? Now, at that point, I had just put some fairly large numbers in, which whether I, really squeezed them, it was still going to be over his budget. So the guy had the nerve to come to me and say, can you still get me the quote? And I basically said to him, well, all things considered and the work that we've done, if you want me to present that, because he needed it, because there was some federal funding program going where he needed 3 quotes and I was going to be one of them. I said, mate, look, we've invested a fair bit of time. Give us $1,900 and I'll give it to you. I'll finish it off. Anyway, fast forward, he just basically said, well, there's no point in us doing business. We're not a fit. That to me, folks, that's disrespectful. He said to me, well, we've invested time too. And I felt like saying, mate, it's your in-house. So then, this is what I'm talking about. So when he said that we're not a fit, he was 100% right. Because when I kicked that and asked him to reward me for the little bit of time that I'd spent, the recommendations that I'd given, we'd been out to the job site twice, we'd been to Home Hardware and done some selections twice, there was just no respect for my time. So that's what I'm talking about. When the client gets into a mode where they think they can just rule it over you, I'm telling you, if that's what they're doing in pre-construction, you don't want them, okay? Move on, okay? And then the other thing is where you've got clients that want construction involvement. In other words, they want, I've got my brother-in-law's an electrician and things like that. And I said that to one, I did a meeting last week as well with a client, and I said to her, I don't mind considering that, but I've got to get to know him and he's got to qualify. So that wasn't a straight up yes. And I tell her the reason is because I'm responsible for delivering it to you, the finished product, and I don't know if this guy is going to hold me up. I don't know how much work he's got on. I don't know how many guys. I don't know if he's being sued. I don't know nothing about this character. So to me, that's a vulnerability and it's going to threaten the outcome of my project. The other side of it is clients go, hey, Max, can I supply all of my toilet suites and vanities? And I just don't go there, because if that gets delivered on site and you open it up and it's broken, I can't expedite a turnaround because I don't know where they got their stuff from, okay? And so, then of course, if my plumber's installing the toilet suite and he cranks down the screws into the floor too hard and he breaks the base, who's replacing it? Well, I didn't buy it. You bought it, Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner, but my plumber broke it. So you're going to make me pay for it. See, it's just like, what you need to do is just stay out of everything, because it's not, what they're trying to do is save money. And all they're doing is buying back, they're saving the warranty. Because if my plumber breaks that toilet suite and I've delivered it, that's between me and my plumber, not the client, okay? So remember, we're trying to provide business construction services at the highest level. And when we start blending operations between me, the builder, and that client, right, that all of a sudden starts muddying the waters and puts pressure on our relationship. And so there's already normally enough pressure on the relationship in the selection process, because what do they want to do? They want to get cracking and start to build. Okay, whereas what I like to do is slow it down, go through the whole selection process meticulously, make sure that I've got all my line items sorted out, okay? Make sure that I've not missed anything, and then I'm ready to compile the data and present it to the client as a fixed price quote. So if you're going to involve clients in the procurement of materials or, of labor, then there has got to be some fee for service as well. So I'm a fixed price builder. I don't subscribe to cost plus. However, let's say you had $100,000 worth of windows. You might ask the client for a 5% management fee or a cost plus 10%, just something, because what they're going to say is, I've talked to the rep down there. Now you need to coordinate with him to get it delivered. Well, that's time and labor that I've got to invest to keep my job going. So there's got to be some fee for service. So you might just come up with a number, a percentage. Like I do it with bigger clients where we're working on $1 million project, and I'm going to use all of my design services, my architect, my engineer, my interior designer, and the deal is cost plus 10%. Okay. Now, if it's on $100,000 worth of windows, are they going to be excited about paying you 10 grand? Probably not. Maybe you'll just look at a flat fee. But I'm telling you, if one of your boys drops that window and you've got to then organise a repair or your replacement, then really, if you've got nothing in there, you're going backwards. But at least if you've got something in there as far as a budget that you can, it's a little bit of an insurance policy, that's a good thing to do as well. But anyway, consider those points. I don't really, as a rule of thumb, I don't want the clients involved in any procurement or supply. Okay. Now, I've got to like the job and like the client. That's the other objective, in the meeting, is just, do I like the client? Do I like the job? If I like the client but I don't like the job, and they're not going to talk about money, I'm out. I've got to like the client, like the job, and the client's got to be able to chat with money. Right. So what we're doing in the meeting is that we're going to go there to learn, okay? And really the three things that I look for is when I'm talking with the client, I say this. I say, look, my role here is to understand what it is that you want exactly. We're not going to be bang on, but I've got to get some good understanding of what this renovation is, how it's going to function and what it's going to look like, and then of course what it's going to cost. And so what I tell the clients often is I say, look, if I can design something that looks good, works well, and fits your financial capabilities, we'll do a deal. Okay, so that's what I'm giving you, these heads up, because it really does influence. When you gather data in an organized fashion, it makes it a lot easier when you go and sit down and start doing quotes. Now, like I said back here, if you haven't got any jobs on the go, then it's a little bit adventurous to go and ask, for that quote, that quote fee, let's call it. We'd call it a pre-construction agreement, and there's, maybe 1% of the contract value. But if you're sitting there on the bones of your ass and you've got no work, you might have to do some work for free because you've got to get the business going, okay? So just think about that. So that's what I ask for. Is it going to look, if it looks good, works well, and it fits their amount of money they've got to spend, then mazel tov, we can go ahead and do a deal. So when I'm with the client, I'm always going to, when I talk about money, and it's always the back end of the conversation, right? That's why this is separated. It's easy to talk about the function, the redesign, and the aesthetic value. That's easy. Clients will talk your ear off. And mind you, meetings should not go on site for longer than 45 minutes, max. Normally I can get out in 30 minutes. I ask the right questions, I get the information I've got. Sometimes I take a video, go out, and we run a drone around like we did on that $1 million job. And that really helped us, because when I sat down with a client who's interstate or in the next province over, we were able to actually go through some of that still shot footage to really help us figure out what we're going to do. Now, then when it comes to finance, so some people say to me, well, how do I start talking about finance? Okay, and I think I alluded to this before. It's like, when I ask the client, hey, what's your expectation around the investment required to do this job? And then before they start, I say, look, don't worry, I don't need you to answer that because you're not a builder, but based on my historical data and my experience, your main floor reno is going to cost somewhere between $140 and $200. How do you feel about that? Okay, questions are the answers, guys and girls. The more questions that you can ask, the more understanding that you will gain. So seek first to understand and then to be understood. right? So what I've got to do, I've been given 2 ears and 1 mouth, and I've got to use them that way. So when I ask a question, then listen a lot, okay? So when I'm talking to them about the financial side of it, I'm going to say to them, what is your expectation? And then I'll jump in with what I think it is. That normally breaks the ice, and then we start, really pulling in the real data as to where they're up to. Now, what people have said to me before, Max, the price that you gave me on site when we first talked a week ago, it seems a little bit high, okay? Now, I'm ready for that. And so what I do is I respond very promptly, either the same day or the next morning at the latest. And I will explain to them that that number that I gave you was a little bit of a ballpark, high and low, and is what I call an opinion of probable cost. How is it that someone can think that I can go to a job site and be able to give them a quote? It's not like we're quoting fly screens, right? There's a lot of, bits and pieces involved in these projects. It takes some time for me to nut it out. So what we want to do is we've got to intimate to them that it was just a ballpark, and that it is just an opinion of probable cost. Now, I would say to the client in that response also that I've got to build a bill of quantities, I've got to do a labour breakdown, and I've got to understand delivery and material handling or logistics. That is what really it comes down to. If you're thinking about estimating better, because remember, profit's a natural byproduct of good estimating, this is kind of it's a bit of a macro. They're your headings. You need a bill of quantities. You need to understand the labour breakdown, and everything has to be delivered. And then it's got to be handled on site, depending on the size of the job. You might have to get maybe a bobcat or a skid steer with some tines on it to move some material, okay? So I'm sure they don't intentionally go, well, Max can give me a quote in 5 minutes. Maybe, I don't think I've ever done that, neither have you. So, but maybe they think that. So I've got to let them know it's going to take me a few days after I get their selections. See, that's something that you can only start a bill of quantities once you know what, like for me to get a bill of quantities and not know exactly, like for instance, if I want to get quartz countertops, stone tops, depending on the range and the type of material, it can literally double in value. It can go from maybe $6,000 or $7,000 right up to 15 grand. So I can do a bill of quantities and tell you that there's going to be 70 square feet. But until the client completes the selections, then and only then I can start to calculate, I can add a rate. I've got the quantity, but I haven't got the rate. So how can I get the total? Okay, so that's something that I haven't done. Now, I've got down here, draw the clients in. And the way I draw the clients in, if I haven't got them in a position because I'm over here and I don't have enough work, right? What I'll do to qualify the clients to make sure that we've got some tripwires is I will get the clients to communicate with me on the JobTread platform that we use. And I set up a selection sheet, a digital selection sheet. Now there's a lot of work, even for a smaller job, 50 or 60 grand, there's a lot of work that goes in because everything that's got aesthetic value has got to be put in there as a line item so that they can make the selection, okay? That takes a lot of work on my end. This is why you don't want to go and do a lot of this for free because you will invest. Now remember, my conversion rate might be 20%. So for every 5 leads, I'm only getting 1 job. So if I'm doing 5 quotes and only getting paid for 1, I'm spending probably 80 hours not getting paid. Not cool. So you want to qualify maybe a little harder and then do less free work as far as pre-construction is concerned. However, if you've got no leads or not many leads, I guess you're going to lift the heavy end until such time as you've got some momentum, and then that will take us back into what does your brand look like, what's your story, what's your brand messaging look like, what's your digital reputation look like. Because if you haven't got this, and you're relying on Angie's List and Bark and House and all these other intermediaries, right? They own your top of funnel, and guys that go and do that, they do that because they don't have an understanding on how to market, how to do lead gen, how to do Google. So you just go, oh, I'll find those guys and they'll do it for me. Yep, well, so does about 500 other builders or general contractors in your area. Okay, so that's why you've got to own your top of funnel and not just rely on somebody else, which is, I wouldn't, yeah, it's kind of abdicating a responsibility because you're like, I'm not going to learn about branding and marketing. I'm not going to learn about lead gen. I'm not going to understand things like CPL and CAC and ROAS. See, if you don't know what they are, they're very important marketing metrics. And you don't need to know that when you go across to, what's that other one? House, something stars, home stars, right? You don't need to know that because they feed you and go, we'll get you leads. And then you figure out that lead's going to 12 other builders in your area. Okay, so draw the clients in because then the thing is what we're trying to do is we're trying to deconstruct the wall of distrust. And the way that we do that is we get to know and they get to know us. We get to know the clients and they get to know us. It has happened, not very often, where I'll get to the end of the bid process and at that point, because I've not enjoyed the pre-construction process, and I don't think they're going to be a nice client to work with, I basically let them know that I'm not going to be their builder. They own all the data, they have all the design, they have the quote, but I'm not going to do the build. Now, there's got to be a pretty strong reason why I wouldn't go ahead and do that, but I am not going to attach myself to them for 3, 6, 9, 12 months to do their project when my gut is telling me that they're not going to be the clients to work for. So, look, I think that's, if you've got any questions on that, max@elitebusinessadvisory.com, shoot me an email, drop a comment. If you've got any questions about this or anything else, if you want to talk to me about business coaching, hit me up online, go to elitebusinessadvisory.com, hit the book a consultation button. If there's not a time in there, email me because it is a little bit full, but I'll make time for you. I'll figure it out. If you're in the Southern Hemisphere, I could do a Saturday morning call for you folks in Australia and New Zealand because that's still my Friday afternoon, which is always blocked out, but I will give you some time if that's the only time that you can get to me. So great to have you along for the ride. I look forward to the next episode. Go build a kick-ass business. See you then. Cheers.